So thanks for taking a moment to watch this video. I've entitled it, "So You're Teaching Online," because I think many of us suddenly find ourselves, given the circumstances in the world today, many of us suddenly find ourselves having to deliver content, whether it be in higher education or high school or even down into K through 5, for example. We're suddenly delivering content using a different modality than many of us are used to. And so I'd like to thank you again for taking the next couple of minutes to let me share a few tips that I think I've found useful over the last few years as I've been teaching online. So just a quick introduction to who am I. So I'm Dr. Stephen Hill. I am an associate professor of business analytics at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington. If you count graduate school, I've been teaching in higher education for the last 15 years at the university level, both undergraduate, graduate courses, but I've also had the privilege to be able to do some professional development courses as well as an Excel basics course that I offer through Udemy. So even though my experience is pretty much concentrated in higher education, and most of my experience, not universally, but most of my experience has been in asynchronous delivery. So I'm doing delivery of pre-recorded content. I'm not meeting students at a particular time, although I have done a little bit of that. I think what you'll see from these tips, and they're general tips, is that most of them can be applied regardless of the particulars of your delivery. So if you're delivering content asynchronously, this stuff should work well for you. If you're doing synchronous content, it might be a little bit different, but I think there's some things that we can certainly use here as well. So again, thanks for joining me. Let's go ahead and look at 10 tips for teaching online, some things that we can do to make the online experience both better for our students, right, but also better for us. So the first tip is simply upfront when working with students is communicating clearly and setting expectations, right? When we teach online, we don't have that same experience to be physically present with the student, right? And so because of this distance effect, it can be very difficult for us to maintain clear lines of communication. And sometimes it can be really unclear for the student what our expectations are. So one of the first things that I do when teaching an online course is I'm very, very upfront about how to reach me, right? Whether it be, email or text, or whether it be, through Slack or some application like that, or setting up a Zoom call or whatever the case might be, is to be super upfront in defining those times. If you say, I'm going to be available by Zoom and it's going to be this particular time window, do that, right? Set expectations, right? So if the student has questions, have them recognize that they need to submit the questions, and they recognize it might take you several hours or even 24 hours to respond, right? And so communicating clearly, setting expectations can save you a lot of grief, and can also sort of cover up, some of your, you're feeling out this online teaching thing, and, being a good communicator and setting expectations can cover your tail and can make this experience much better for you as well as for the students. So when developing videos for an asynchronous delivery of a course, I find that doing short videos is absolutely the way to go. So I tend to use videos that are less than 10 minutes, although I'll have some that might sneak up to be as much as 15. But if I'm just doing straight lecture and I'm talking about concept, something that I might normally do in class and do that for 50 minutes or 75 minutes at a time, it's really different online. Expecting a student to sit there and to just digest 75 minutes of content like they would in a classroom, it doesn't work that way. And so you'll find attention drifts. There's something else to do. I can go get a snack, I can take a nap, whatever the case might be. You'll find a reason not to watch the video. So keeping the video short is really, really helpful, right? So tip number 2, short videos. And that goes hand in hand with tip number 3, which is to offer frequent opportunities for students to do something, right? And so what I tend to do is I'll do a short video, or maybe a couple of short videos, and then have the student immediately take a short quiz, or immediately do a short activity. Go find an article about this topic, go and then write a 1-paragraph summary. It's not hard, it doesn't take them a lot of time, but it moves from one type of information acquisition, just sort of gorging on a lecture, to, okay, well, now I've got to go and put this lecture to practice. Fortunately, I teach some technical material, and so one of the benefits of teaching analytics is I can teach a concept, I can demonstrate the concept in software, for example, and then I can turn around and ask the students to do this concept, to practice this concept in software themselves. So it lends that, the type of material I teach tends to lend very well to this type of setup. Now, of course, if you have opportunities for student action, you have to grade and assess those student actions, right? And so what I try to do is automate that grading experience. I want to say as much as possible, but that's not totally true. What I try to do is I automate the sort of rote stuff. So for example, if I'm teaching Excel and I'm teaching someone how to use some basic Excel functions, I can write a quiz that I can deploy via Canvas, which is the LMS that I use at my university, and I can have them go and do that quiz and it be graded automatically, right? And so it takes a little time to build a quiz, and if I want to build a good one, it'll often include some automated feedback and things like that, but it makes life so much easier. So then I can actually focus the grading effort, which I do a lot of grading every semester. I can focus the grading effort on the things that are truly super important, which for me in analytics is having them describe, via a presentation or via written report, what the results of a particular model are, or they can talk about, what they found in data, something like that. They can do those sort of mechanical things via a quiz, and then the super important application-oriented stuff they can do, and I can grade that. So tip number 5, let's look at a couple practical things for actually recording videos and recording content. Do your best to find a dedicated recording space. So I'm in the corner of my bedroom. I'm fortunate enough to have a big enough room where I can put a computer desk over in the corner. I've got a nice window here. It's actually looks like it's kind of about to be stormy outside, so the light is maybe not as good as I would like it to be, but I have a nice window, natural light shining in, sort of lighting me up a little bit, which is nice. What I've done behind me is I've gone and I've cleared out, some clutter. There's a bathroom and a closet back there. I've shut those doors so you can't see them. I mean, there's nothing really exciting there, but I don't want it to be a distraction. There's a kind of a dresser here behind me. I've sort of taken things off of that. There was some stuff sitting up there. Again, nothing really all that exciting, but I didn't want it to be a distraction. I wanted to make it as easy for the student to focus on the content. If you're truly concerned about sort of what it's going to look like behind you, there are of course opportunities to use virtual backgrounds. Zoom does that. It's a virtual green screen. It's okay. It's not my favorite thing. It looks a little weird, but that is an option that's out there. Buy a bed sheet, buy some green felt, put it up behind you. You can spend a little bit of money to sort of touch up the recording space, and it makes a big difference. My focus here is I want this to be as distraction-free as possible, right? I want the background behind me to be as distraction-free as possible. So that leads us to tip number 6 is, while video quality is really important, I think that audio quality is probably more important. So if you have a video and it's a little pixelated, maybe that's not so great. It is what it is. If your webcam is not amazing, it is what it is. Audio is super, super important. If you're going to spend money developing, buying, tools for recording, and you're recording at home, don't skimp on the microphone. So I use a Blue Yeti, which I've found works really, really well. I hope this sounds pretty good. And so I use this for Zoom calls. I use this for recording lectures, all different kinds of things. And I've been really impressed with its quality. There are certainly other microphones that are out there as well. But if you are spending money, or if your company or your university is spending money on particular equipment, get a good microphone. Makes a huge difference. The next one is, this one is kind of a thing I do, I think may be different for you depending on your situation, is I minimize scripted content. I don't sit here, I'm not reading this. This is all sort of, it's not ad-libbed, it's not totally ad hoc. I have a list, I have a little note sheet in front of me that has some talking points, but every word I'm saying is not something I pre-wrote down, right? And so why do I do this? Does it not come off, as kind of unprofessional or maybe amateur? Well, I don't think so. I think it comes off more authentic. It comes across as, this is what it would be like in the classroom. In the classroom, I don't stand up in front of my students and read to them, right? I use some notes. I come in with some notes that I've prepared. I don't have every single word written down that I'm planning to say. And I use those notes sort of to jumpstart a lecture point or a discussion or whatever the case might be. So some people may be uncomfortable with that, and so in that case I would say just supplement those notes with as much content as you need in order to be able to be effective. And I think over time, as you become more comfortable, you'll be able to reduce the amount of scripted content and be able to sort of be a little bit more natural. And one thing I would mention is, so what do you do? I'm unscripted. I'm just kind of doing my thing. What do you do if there's a noise in the background, or your kid comes in and asks a question, or if your kid makes a noise in the background? I had some people working in my yard the other day, and there was this loud noise, and I left it in. And I left it in because it makes me more authentic. It makes me more natural. If it was obnoxious and super annoying, well, you know what? That's the benefit of recording, is I can go back and I can get rid of that obnoxious and annoying noise. Like if my dog barks, the dog's actually asleep over there. If the dog starts howling, yeah, I'm going to edit that out. But if there's a little noise in the background because one of my kids is talking or something like that in the next room, acknowledge it and say, I'm sorry, my kid's next door, he's making a little bit of noise. This makes you human, right? It's okay. Leave it in, right? So maybe, of course, there's going to be settings where that's not maybe appropriate, but use your judgment. But I find that leaving those little tiny things in, it humanizes you in a way that is hard to do in an online environment. Tip number 8. Scheduled availability. So particularly if you're teaching asynchronously, what I like to do is do virtual office hours. So you can do this a couple of ways. You can have a Zoom room where you can just be there ready for people to pop in and ask questions. That works well. I do this via Slack a lot. Slack works great because I can just have it open in another window. I can be working. It can be on my second monitor, for example. I can be doing other stuff. Somebody pops in with the Slack, asks a question. It's all good. The question is there in the Slack workspace so that people can come back and read that question later. So if somebody has the same question, it's already been answered, and it just works super well. So what this does is, again, it builds that connection. It goes back to tip number 1 about communication and expectation setting. Response time online is critical. The worst thing I think for a student is they send you an email, and a day goes by, and another day goes by, and another day goes by, so on and so forth, and you haven't replied. Okay? I'm not saying you should reply to an email in 5 minutes, or 30 seconds, or 10 minutes even. But I'm saying, again, set an expectation for response time. I will do my best to respond to you within 24 hours, something like that. I am almost always faster than that, okay? Even if it's, okay, I've received your question. Give me a day. I'll answer your question this evening. Whatever it is, just that one response, even if it's not a totally satisfactory answer, is better than nothing. So work on response time. Again, tip 1, that will cover a lot of sort of the rough patches as you work your way through this online teaching experience. Tip number 10, the final tip, is edit your videos, even just a little. Okay, whatever tool you like. I use Camtasia just because that's what's provided for me by my university. You can do this on, if you have an iPad or an Apple device, you can use iMovie. There's free options that are out there as well. So even just a little bit of editing can make a huge difference. What I'll do is I'll trim off the first couple seconds where I'm getting everything kind of set up, and the last couple of seconds where I'm turning Camtasia off. Just cut those little pieces out. If there are some super annoying, noises or weirdness that happens in the background, I talked about being okay leaving some of that in, but if it's just obnoxious, again, I'm gonna edit that out. If I make a mistake that's like a super bad mistake halfway through my video, then I can stop, edit that little clip out, and do it over again. That brings me to mistakes. Do you leave mistakes in? Sometimes I do. If I make a little tiny mistake and I correct myself, right, immediately, sometimes I'll leave that in. Again, it's a humanizing thing. So it's not I made a mistake and realized it 10 hours later after I posted the video to YouTube. It's not that kind of thing. It's I made a mistake in the flow of the moment, right? So I read something wrong, or I wrote an equation down wrong, or something like that. I will go back and correct it. Again, it's my effort to humanize and make myself appear like a normal person, right? And then finally, I do have one bonus tip for you. Have fun with this. Have fun. The online modality gives you options that you don't have as easily in a classroom, right? I have the option to do a 7-minute lecture and to turn around and give them an activity and then do another 7-minute lecture. Can I do this in the classroom? Yeah, it's just not the same. I actually take advantage of these opportunities, right? Send them to go read an article. I'm not going to tend not to use valuable class time to have them read an article, but I can do a 10-minute lecture, have them read an article, do an activity, do another 10-minute lecture, and kind of continue this cycle. It's much easier to do in an online environment. So look at the positives and have fun with this format, and roll with it. So again, thank you for taking the time to watch this. I hope there were some things that were useful. If you'd like to contact me, I'm happy to give some suggestions or to provide some support for you if you have any questions. And again, thanks for tuning in.